I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a debut author, composer, dad, and a startup founder, and the author of his debut book, Orchestrating Connection. Other than Mr. David Noman.
I
Oh,
really appreciate
Homan, sorry.
Homan, yes, and I
Yes,
appreciate you
sorry.
having me on to your incredible podcast, Daniel. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Welcome, Mr. David Homan. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Absolutely. So I grew up small town in northern Florida, ended up getting to New York City and realizing that the strength of anyone's success in their life was their community and the trusted relationships around that. So I went from no connections to building a global network of connections, a community, and now my debut book, as you say, just came out a few days ago. And with that, the launch of a startup, all with the same focus. How do we end this epidemic of loneliness? How do we build purposeful community and build trust that really supports us when we need it for anything we set out to do?
Mr. David Homan, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom today. Right. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. Orchestrating Connection. Can you tell us about this book?
Sure. So, about a decade ago, I coined the term orchestrated connecting. I'm a classical composer in my other life. So if you ask, your Amazon device or go on iTunes or anything else, you can find my music, which is romantic style classical music. And every once in a while, somebody would come up to me and they'd say that I'd found their resonance. I found that one piece of music, that melody that made them purposeful and feel whole. And the same time, left and right, as somebody who's a self-proclaimed, connector or super connector, I realized that I was doing this between people, talking to people, hearing them, really deep listening, and then getting them to that exact right person they needed to meet. That spurred a large scale global community, which is called Orchestrated Connecting. And after a decade of doing this, I finally succumbed to the pressure of all my peers and friends who said, you need to publish a book about this, not just your methodology, but really a grounded playbook so anyone can be more intentional in their life, do the self work they need, and from that, create their life like a symphony.
How do you define purposeful community in today's fragmented world?
So think about it this way. We all lived through COVID, and it became very, very clear about 6 months in who you still thought about and who cared about you. There were people that were social beasts that went out every night and then they sat home alone waiting for the phone to ring. There were other people where their friends drove across the country, sent them supplies to another place, and had their back without asking because those friendships were built on trust, not just based on somebody's desires or needs. So when I and my co author Noah Askin think about purposeful community, this is different than tribal. Like you say, we're in a fractured world. I would say, Daniel, that we're in a tribal world again. We've retreated into being around people that look like us and talk like us, thinking that that homogeny and being around people that support one value system is how the world works. Every innovation on this planet has come from collaboration, it's come from diversity, and it's come from people being intentional about who they have around them to reach their goals. So when I think of what purposeful community that has your back when you need it, that can accelerate what you need without you asking, and more than that, that has this common bond based on shared values, not just similarities.
Why did you choose the metaphor of orchestrating connection rather than simply building it?
People find it exciting Even though no one listens to classical music, I've done lots of press throughout my life. There's still people that don't know that they can literally Google me and listen to the music I've written. And so I realized my purpose was greater than the music I hope everyone would listen to that I write and perform. And so when I thought about what was that verbiage, what was that term that could get everyone excited, this idea of a symphony orchestra is just grandiose. You have 150 instruments, strings, winds, brass, percussion. Stravinsky added a typewriter. There's all these incredible, massive sounds. But when you look at it from a composer's perspective, you have a melody, which is you. You have the harmony, which is the people around you. And the composer's role into orchestrating their music is simply to take that core of the melody and what surrounds it to give it that heft and make it big and broad and grandiose. And I believe we, every one of us, can do the same for our life, our melody, and the people around us, that harmony, to realize we can all play different parts in each other's lives, but together do something much greater than we can do alone.
Let's talk about the problem in modern tribalism, Mr. David. What are the key ways modern tribalism actually prevents genuine connection?
So we'll think about this a couple ways. If you are around everyone who cooks like you basically make the same food. When you're around somebody from a different culture, you might learn how they cook, learn what they do, or you might combine it. And as you know, as necessity is the mother of invention, imagine what happens when people choose to be around people that are not like them, that give them different viewpoints, that possibly even counter their viewpoints. What happens when people come to that middle? What that middle is every modern innovation in technology, every new amazing combination of food on this planet. And some of the most gorgeous people on this planet, in and out, are people of mixed race who represent a global look as opposed to a homogenous look. So I live in a world of privilege being a white man. I'm a Jewish white man, so I am a minority in that, but I'm in a much different world than the majority of this planet. Yet being a white man is seen as dominant, even though we are not statistically the dominant gender or race. And so I say this bluntly because I believe that when you look at tribalism, you look at people thinking they are more comfortable being with people who look like them, believe like them, live near them. That doesn't mean you actually find your people. And the more you can very purposefully and intentionally state your values, what you care about, what you want to do, what you need, and who you'll help, you can have communities based on action rather than this world of being around people that make you feel good because they look like you.
Mr. David, what is the most damaging myth about community building that you want to debunk?
That everyone should belong everywhere. I've taken great pride in my network for a decade now of having a rule which I've enforced, which I found was really, really rare in other communities. And that's risk. I tell people how I want them to behave and how to choose to belong. And when their behavior doesn't conform to those standards, I remove them or I ask them to leave. And I've enforced this now. There's been several dozen people who would love to be in my network that cannot because they were way too forward and sexually inappropriate with women. In other cases, they simply didn't do what they say they were going to do. They'd said they'd take a call, they'd take a call, they'd take a call, it gets scheduled, and every time they don't show up. Once or twice, that's an excuse. 5 or 10 times, that's a habit. And so I've removed people from my network and from my world, but in particular my private community, for not conforming to what they agreed to. And so many communities spend their time wanting everyone to be involved, everyone to have value, everyone to have a place. And I think uphold a higher standard of behavior and have everyone elevate to that. And you end up with a much different paradigm than even how those people interact with each other on a day to day basis outside your community.
Let's talk about the practical connection building. What's the first step someone should take to create a deeper connection in their existing circles?
So the first step is your own work. And I don't want to discount this because over half this book could read as a self-help, self-healing, interpersonal relations book about the work you need to do to become more purposeful. So think about it this way. If you meet with somebody who doesn't know what they want to do, doesn't like their job, isn't sure what they're doing this weekend, do you really want to engage with that person? Or do you want to engage with somebody like you who's done for 4 years now an incredible number of interviews, being curious with all of these authors in the food world as well, so that everyone understands you are somebody who is purposely looking for diverse thought, diverse leadership, diverse perspectives, and sharing that with the world? You are by far, Daniel, more interesting than most people, other people meet because you have this armada of incredible people that you've built trust with and helped promote. And so when you do that work, it could be a podcast like yours, it could just be becoming an author, it could be starting a running club. It doesn't actually matter. But when people are purposeful, they're not just more grounded in themselves. That helps them then actually build a community of people around them that share that purpose and value system. So that's the first step. You have to focus on that more than anything, because if you can't define yourself and therefore be defined by other people, then what you do is relegate yourself to assumptions, many cases false assumptions, or just, not to be the type of dynamic person that you could and should to build a much more intentional world around yourself.
Very well said, Mr. David. Very well said indeed. As an orchestrator, composer, and author, dad, and a startup founder, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
I have one long-term goal, and it comes from my father, who's now 87 in poor health. But he's always said, whenever he does pass this world, he wants his tombstone to say, he meant well. And for all that I want to do in this world to achieve great success as an author, as a founder, as a community leader, I've had one strategy that's similar to that, which is how do I get out of the way so the right people can meet each other? So that is both a short-term goal, it's a long-term goal, it's how I operate. I'm hopefully going to build a startup that solves the personal connection challenges that technology faces. My hope is as people read my book and they think of it as simple and then profound, they adopt some of those behaviors into how they work. Because that long-term goal, if a bunch of communities tied together, that is a movement that can do the one thing on this planet that we need, which is to create an accountability and therefore a global reputation of everyone in their actions. Because right now, bad, horrible things happen on this planet because people don't have to be accountable for what they've done. And I believe that when we have more intrinsically deep, active communities, that's impossible to have. So I'll just give you this one example, right? You walk around anonymously in a city like Vancouver or New York. There are certain parts of the city where there's just litter and trash everywhere, and there's parts that there are not. It's not just the socioeconomic background of those, although that does play a part, but somebody's going to be really hard pressed walking right out of their own building to throw a can of Coke or part of a newspaper on the ground. But they're much more likely when they feel anonymous to do so. And yet there are certain cities and cultures in this planet where there's no litter because there's an understanding that's a disrespect to that culture, to that environment. But that disrespect is profound because it means if you do choose to do that, your social reputation, everything goes down. And I believe that the stronger we have hundreds and hundreds to thousands of overlapping communities with that sense of accountability and responsibility, we won't have these challenges of people feeling like they're anonymous and can do what they want for themselves above helping other people.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. David, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
There's some amazing statistics my co-author Noah and I uncovered in our book that proved what I'd been done in practice. Out of every 10 people you or I meet, Daniel, say at a conference or an event, only 3.4 on average will express interest back in us when we ask curiosity with any curiosity about them. So think about this. You could be one of those people who is meeting people and not expressing curiosity and losing an opportunity to meet somebody. And when combined with the fact that those of us who are strongest in this world are comfortable being vulnerable, if you're comfortable in yourself, why do you care that somebody you just met might pass judgment on you? I am perfectly fine, even on this podcast, talking about the fact my father is in ill health. And at any minute, I might get the call, which will be the call that changes my life. And by having the audacity or the courage to say that, that opens up for somebody, even who wasn't curious, to either ask about that or to share. If we just embrace these core strengths instead of weaknesses, of curiosity and vulnerability, and do a little work to understand how people see us and how we see ourselves, it's really not hard to change what can be apathetic behavior into empowering your life in a different way.
Thank you for that amazing advice, Mr. David. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
There's a lot of books from the nonfiction world of connection that have influenced my journey, but I'll tell you the book I read every single year, which is Kurt Vonnegut's Galapagos. I've read this since I was 12. It's about the end of the world and this weird, complicated journey of different people from Hiroshima to Venezuela to the Galapagos Islands that become the new cradle of mankind. And it's basically one of Kurt Vonnegut's most, dystopian versions of we think everything really mattered, and in the end, nothing really mattered. The world ended, mankind in this book became amphibious, and the only real danger was sharks. And what Vonnegut in particular teaches me, and has always taught me as an author, uh, and just as a human, is that so much of what we think matters doesn't actually matter. It's absurd. And therefore, the only thing that does matter, in my opinion, to give us purpose is being able to support the people around us and help them have their dreams and visions come more true. Because maybe if we could each do a little bit more of that, we wouldn't have to worry about all the sharks metaphorically swimming around us.
Thank you for that recommended book, Mr. David. And what emerging trends give you hope about the future of community building?
I think the most important emerging trend, and this comes from COVID and the fact technology hasn't helped us, is everyone recognizes that being followed or liked is meaningless. Want to take an action? See how many people actually download your podcast and listen to it. Because if somebody's going to choose to spend 20 minutes of their life engaging in something you brought to this world, that is worth way more than liking it on Facebook or, forwarding it on LinkedIn or Twitter. I believe that the more we use technology to demonstrate action, as opposed to just this passive way of going, good for you, Daniel, you have a podcast, as opposed to going, what do you need? Who do you need? Can I help? That trend will make us all build more intentional relationships around us.
Yes, indeed. And thank you so much for my 3,000 downloads every day. Thank you so much, people. So, what's one the outdated rule about relationships we need to unlearn?
You know, don't hand out your contact information, which is then your time to people, unless you've actually asked them and want them to choose to connect with you. I'll go to endless networking events and conferences where somebody meets me and says, let's connect on LinkedIn. Here's my card. That's meaningless to me. What's meaningful is to go, I really love talking with you. I'm going to check out your book. I'd love to introduce you to my friend Sarah. Can we connect further to get to know each other better? And it's just that intentionality that people don't seem to get because they think getting my contact information means I'm going to follow up. Strike up a conversation, show that intention, purpose, curiosity, and vulnerability, and you're much more likely to get 100% ROI for spending the time going to an event than what people believe, which is the more people you meet, the more you'll find your right person. And I'll say, no, you're missing that right person most of the time because you didn't approach it in a way that was about building a relationship from that interaction. You spend most of your time going, oh, I met the CEO, I met the keynote speaker, and then they don't follow up with you. They don't remember you because you didn't resonate. And that's the difference in what I believe is the new approach should be.
Mr. David, how has the writing this book changed the way you personally approach relationships?
I've fired from you know from my side for a lot of this. I've run a community, I've set up a rule system, I've talked about all this in pieces, but I never put it all together. And by working with a Harvard trained incredible academic and my friend Noah, I was able to codify this, to simplify this, and to make it something where our principles of diversity, curiosity, vulnerability, generosity, and gratitude might all seem in essence in one to one, simple, but that there's a system now that I can say has worked for a decade. This is not a playbook from somebody who just built a network of my friends. I've created access to major athletes and billionaires and CEOs and major community leaders and figureheads, all with trust because this approach worked. It's long term. And by codifying it and writing it down, Daniel, I got to a point where everything that I do now is streamlined. It's all about the same goal, not just of educating people about what I've done, but helping them do it, building the tech for that, and demonstrating through my own community, my events, and my actions how to live a life where you can orchestrate it.
Mr. David, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my Abstract Essay is already in fifth season, Abstract Poetry in second season, and my Book 101 review in fifth season too, Comedy 101 in second season, and my Food 101 in fifth season as well, Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in its third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. David, if listener could implement or viewers just one idea from your book today, what should it be?
It's a question. And this is a question I often ask, and I ask this for you, Daniel, to do the same, which is when you think about that moment in your life where you got that first big break, how ready were you for it? And who have you not thanked recently or never at all for helping make the introduction that got you to where you are? We often forget about the person that's the catalyst because we're so focused on our journey. All of us have that person or several people for which even just a reminder or an expression of gratitude will go further than you could even think. So that's the lesson, that's the challenge for everyone to take for wherever you are in this world. There's somebody who saw something in you and made a call they didn't have to make.
Mr. David Homan, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your book, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Absolutely. And I make myself easy to find. I'm a connector, a composer. You can Google me and my music and the word orchestrating connection or orchestrated connecting. I would love to help everyone and share this work more intentionally. So thank you.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. David Homan because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more empowering books like this to come, more and more empowering music to come. So, Mr. David, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.